Every great city has its tales, and I've been documenting their stories and people for over 20 years. This is Tales of a City. Welcome once again to Tales of a City. In tonight's episode, I'm taking you back to Daisy's Debonair's Lunch for Support Act, where this month our special guest was none other than the fabulous Peter Goers.
Guys, we've got a special treat for you. It's going to be a very big day's entertainment, but to start off with, we have the great honour of having one of the finest voices in broadcasting as our guest today. Would you please welcome to the stage Mr. Peter Goers?
And, this is where rock and roll goes to die, isn't it? God love you all. Keep breathing. This is my second appearance at Support Act, and I'm glad to be here. Let's pause and remember wonderful Daisy Day, who started this and has helped so many people, and allows us all to reach out to those less fortunate in the music industry, and that is a marvellous thing indeed. And good on to Gary Burrows and wonderful Jethro. Jethro has a heart as big as Texas. And Greg Clark and others, Elaine there, the door bitch. Now looking around most of you, mind you, I'm nearly up to the age of many of you, although I'll be 48 next year. You can't say old people anymore. It's politically incorrect to say old people or seniors or elderly. All these terms are politically incorrect. The new term is pre-dead. So I love it. And you know you're getting really old, don't you? You know you're getting really old when you're watching the television and you say, gee, that's a nice outfit on Princess Anne. It's all over then, really. It's all over. And I love the Power. Oh, every time the Power wins, I get a stiffy. And when they won the grand final, I had a stiffy for a week. I have recently, as you may know, 2 years ago, moved to Glenelg. I left Norwood after 26 years because there aren't enough cafes in Norwood. You can never get a cup of chino or a focaccia in Norwood. And now I'm at Glenelg where there aren't enough ice cream stores. Now, I know Willsie's been a guest here. Who hasn't been a guest here? Willsie. I know I attended when Ron Tremaine was a guest. That was one of the great lunches. Speaking of which, his valedictory's coming up. Thanks, Gary Burrows. You got to come. It's and Barry McCaskill's doing a lot of work with this. It's a kind of a roast and a celebration of our wonderful Ron Tremaine's life at the Governor Hindmarsh Hotel, the Gov, Saturday, October the 26th, 11 till 3. So it's a good time. You can get back to the nursing home in time for the kerosene bath and for your tea. So it's a very appropriate time, and Ron will be there, we hope. Bless his heart. Love that man who has done a lot for music and a lot for this state. So, I know Willsie was here. Now, recently, I did a gig with Willsie at the Windsor Gardens Hotel. Has anybody been to the Windsor Gardens Hotel? I'm surprised because only morons go there. And, the Windsor Gardens Hotel, it's not the arsehole of the world, but you can see it from there. Stage, the manager, I'm not kidding, and he rang a bell, and all these people, all these fucking zombies, came in from the pokies room, on their Zimmer frames, and they sat down and stared at us, and he said, the manager said, now, everybody, we've got a wonderful treat for yous today. Wilsey's coming on, 19, Logie. She's absolutely wonderful, Wilsey. And meanwhile, he said, before she comes on, we're going to hear from this guy called, what's your name? Peter Goers. Yes, and he's going to come on and attempt to entertain us before Wilsey comes on. So a big Windsor Gardens Hotel welcome for, what's your name? Peter Goers. And I walked on and I took the microphone and he said, oh, wait a minute. And he snatched the microphone back out of my hands and he said, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you, he said, the buffet is now open. So I'm standing there about to work as, you know, all these zombies on their Zimmer frames go over to the buffet. Followed by Wilsey, of course. Recently, Wilsey and I got a gig at Renmark on the Murray River Queen. So, you know, my heritage listed Volvo doesn't go beyond Jepp's Cross for obvious reasons. So we went in Wilsey's car and she, strangely enough, drove. And we're driving along the Max Thatcher Northern Expressway and she's going about 70 in 110 zone. And she says, you know, I haven't driven out of the city since 1972. And we're in the wrong lane. And she wouldn't go over 70 at any point. So I thought, this is going to take us a while to get to Renmark, but we'd left in good time. So we come into Truro, and this bizarre thing happened. Just as we're chuffing along Truro, I think the speed limit's 40, we were going 20. You couldn't write this. A truck carrying a house pulled in front of us. Quite legally. So we're now following a house. And we go down, I think it's called Accommodation Hill, to that wonderful view of, you know, the vast plains, sunlit plains extended of the Riverland. And except we can't see anything because we're following the house. Fortunately, the truck with the house is going about 70, so it suits Wilsey. So we go along for about 10 Ks and stop. And we can't see why we've stopped because the house is in front of us. And we're there for about a half an hour, inching forward. And we've now got 30 or 40 vehicles behind us. And we realised the road must be closed, which it was. And we finally get to this fat fuck of a cop from Central Casting who's redirecting the traffic. And trucks are going on a sealed road towards Sedan because the whole Sturt Highway's blocked off. And he directs us on a dirt road. And I said, this is Wilsey. He couldn't have given a fuck. And I said, how long are we going to be on this dirt road? And he said, just stay on the dirt road till you hit bitumen. 42 kilometres of this dirt road until we hit I think the Teely Highway, which comes through the back of Morgan. And I'd wanted to get, because that whole area is very bad for kangaroos and wombats. And I did not want Wilsey to hit either. So that's why we'd left to get there well before dusk. It's now dusk in Morgan, and there are kangaroos hopping in front of the car. Wilsey's driving, and Wilsey's saying, oh, wow, there's kangaroos. And I'm saying, do try and avoid them, which she did. And she drove heroically all the way, and we stopped at McDonald's, of course, in Renmark, and did the gig. Then the next morning we left at 7 o'clock in the morning to get back to Adelaide, which took all day at 70 kilometres an hour. And we're creeping out along the deck, the narrow deck of the River Murray Queen or whatever it's called, and we passed this couple who are in bed bonking with the curtains open. And they look up, how's their luck, and see Wilsey and me. And to their credit, they went, oh, hi, and continued, oh, bless her heart. Love Wilsey. Dave Flanagan was here, wasn't he? Yes, I miss Dave. You know, he came on my show 17 years. I've been, this is the 17th year I've been doing that show at the ABC. And I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. And I just hope I can hang on to it for some years because, anyway, you know. Dave used to come on and do Ted from Tennyson and Damien the goal umpire, a character he'd developed, that very camp goal umpire he'd developed for the McGarry Medal telecasts years before. And after Dave died, at 66, far too young, and I thought, well, I'll do a couple of his gags because he doesn't need them anymore, and I do. And Dave would say, so this is my little tribute to Dave Flanagan, love his heart. Dave would say, I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. Or he'd say, oh, look, I'm going out with this homeless girl. It's wonderful. She's homeless. I can drop her off anywhere. Or he'd say, there'd be an old chap in a country hotel, you know, staying in one of those rooms upstairs, no ensuite, of course, just, if you're lucky, a hand sink in the corner of the room. And this guy's trying to sleep and the sink's dripping. And it's keeping him awake, and he rings down to the manager, the publican, and he says, I can't sleep. I must have a leak in the sink. And the guy says, why not? Everybody else does. Finally, Dave's gag, he'd say, my wife said, treat me like a princess, so I drove her into a tunnel. Oh, come on. You'll be telling that later, yeah. And I've been of late opening for, I love her. If you ever get a chance to see her, go. Fiona O'Loughlin. She's, you know, she's had a tough time, but she's come through that, and she's wonderful. She's magic, Fiona, She's magic. And I love watching her. And I've been very honoured to open for her all over the state. And she says my favourite gag of hers, really, or one of them many. She says she was crook in Melbourne. Who isn't? And she was living in Melbourne. Don't know why. And she was in bed, and eventually the doctor came and he ran all these tests on her, and he came back to see her, and he said, look, I can absolutely rule out chronic fatigue. You do not have chronic fatigue. And she said, oh, fuck, now I've got to get out of bed. You may know people like that. I mean, it's a terrible thing to happen. That'll be on Channel 44. Problem. Then dawn services. You know, if I worked in drag, my drag name would be Dawn Service. And I have been honoured to do, to commentate, I think, 15 dawn services from the State National War Memorial for the ABC. It's a high honour, and it's something that I revere. I revere Anzac Day. I revere that it's this great coming together. I think even if you don't go to a dawn service, you still feel something on Anzac morning. And I think it's the only time as a nation that we're truly united in spirit and feeling. And every dawn service I get to the State War Memorial there about 4 o'clock for the 6 o'clock service. And I stand there at the broadcast point on Kintore Avenue, and I watch the people come. I watch the thousands come. I watch the way that kids bring their parents these days, not the other way around. I watch it's everybody. And one morning I'm standing there, and the service is about 10 minutes away, and these two chaps come up to me, very well dressed, very Henry Bucks. And the younger one's holding a wreath, a younger guy and an older guy. And they said, not good morning or hello, they just said, we're from the Adelaide Club. Where do we put our wreath? There's a couple of answers to that, isn't there? And had I not been working for the ABC, I would have said, well, this year the wreath slaying is on the banks of the Torrens, so go down, when you hear the last post, lay your wreath in the water and then jump in afterwards. But I told them where to go as politely as I could through gritted teeth. Now, you have the minute's silence, but some years ago, the RSL rather, in its infinite wisdom, decided to make it a 2-minute silence at dawn services. Now, radio hates silence. After 25 seconds, the computers think that the announcer has had a stroke or dropped dead. So it automatically cuts in with ABBA singing Dancing Queen, which is not something you want in a dawn service. So all these years, during the silence, the minute silence, I've had a little bird caller around my neck, and I breathe heavily. So I'm going tweet, 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 and it's worked. However, the first year they brought in the 2-minute silence. In Adelaide, Canberra and Melbourne, the same thing happened. At 1 minute and 25 seconds, the computers cut in, not, thankfully, with Dancing Queen, but with Carol Whitelock here in Adelaide saying there's been a break in transmission, and it went into Leor's This Old Love, which wasn't so bad. But about 10 seconds into that song, the people at Collinswood, the producers, realised what had happened and switched it back. So there was a meeting at the ABC with sound engineers, with clipboards, to decide how this could be avoided in the future. And then I got the strangest direction I have ever received. They said, the easiest way to solve this, Peter, is next year, can you please describe the silence? Well, it's very silent. Isn't it good that no one's talking in the silence? Yeah. George Kapanaris, remember him? He used to do the, RAA ads, yes. And he was doing, one of those wogs up your nose show at Thebby. And he wanted to be interviewed. And we said, sure. And my producer said to him, well, you can mention the RAA ads once, which is a kind of ABC rule. And he said, fine. When he came in, the producer reminded him of this. He said, fine. When he came into the studio, I reminded him again. He said, fine. So, hello, George Kapanaris. Welcome. He said, yes, well, I'm best known in South Australia for the RAA ads. I said, okay, fine. So this is on air. And I said, now, you're doing Wogs Out of Work, or whatever it was called, at Thebby. He said, yes, and people will remember me from the RAA ads. I said, right. And then I said, trying to change the subject, I said, well, you're from Melbourne. What's the difference between Melbourne and Adelaide? And he said, well, in Melbourne, people don't see me because they don't get the RAA ads in Melbourne. And I said, George Kapanaris, thank you for coming in. We went to a song. I said, get the fuck out of my studio. He's never been back. He's a dickhead. And I go travelling around. I was in Coffs Harbour once. Anyone been to Coffs Harbour? Isn't it awful? Horrible place. And there's the big banana, which isn't even very big. I think Scotty's got a bigger banana. And I wasn't having a very good time in Coffs Harbour, but somebody said you get a lovely feed at the fish and chip shop. And I went down to the lovely fish and chip shop by this huge groin, like a breakwater. And I went in and I ordered the minimum fish and chips and a small Greek salad. And when it came, it was enough for a football team. It was this vast amount of food. They must have been closing or something. So I dragged this food to the front of the shop. There's a cafe section outside. And there are all these seagulls, looking at me, every bite of every chip, the way they do. And there are huge signs everywhere saying, do not feed the seagulls. And I'm thinking, fine. So I ate as much of the fish and chips and the Greek salad as I could. And I thought, what am I going to do with it? I've got all these seagulls with their beady eyes on me. And I saw these stone steps up to the breakwater. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll take it up there. So I gathered up lots of fish and chips and Greek salad that I couldn't eat, dragged myself up the stairs, and huge boulders, and I hurled the fish and chips and the Greek salad over a boulder, not knowing there was a fisherwoman on the other side of the boulder who's now covered in fish and chips and Greek salad. And she's furious. She's ropeable. Now, what do you say? And I said, I'm terribly sorry. I'm from Melbourne. I barrack for Collingwood. And I'll close with this. Your lovely audience, old people. It's given you, having a bit of a laugh, it's given you a bit of exercise, hasn't it? And thank you for your support of Support Act. And once again, I thank Jethro and Gary and Greg et al. And those who organised this. It's a wonderful thing for everyone to come together and have a nice meal, not too expensive, and help others. That's a good thing. So you're doing a good thing. And that defines us as Australians. Two things. One, we help one another, don't we? It seems to be a sacred need in us to reach out and help other people, which is wonderful. Secondly, we don't take ourselves too seriously. And the Americans can never quite understand that. Fuck them. I love Broken Hill. How many of you have been to Broken Hill? Yes. If you haven't been, you've got to go to Broken Hill. I don't think you're an Australian until you've been to that amazing town. And I've had many experiences there. There was a journalist called Jack Marks who went to work there years ago, and he was staying in a motel in Oxide Street, and it was a bit pricey. And he came down to get his lunch, a double-cut roll, in a snack bar in Argent Street, the main street. And yes, they still have double-cut rolls in Broken Hill. They've never heard of focaccias. And the woman making his double-cut roll, you know, beef and salad, pickled onions, beetroot, all that, pineapple, was wrong side of 60, not that I can talk. And she was rather blousy with platinum blonde beehive do. Got the picture? And he said to this woman, he said, look, he said, I'm staying in a motel in Oxide Street. It's a bit pricey. He said, can you tell me, this hotel across the road here in Argent Street, can you tell me what that charges for per night? And she said, I don't know, love. She said, I don't know. I haven't been a hooker for years. Thank you very much. Support Act. On ya, Daisy. On ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank Mr. Peter Goers?
Peter is always an entertaining and incredibly intelligent man to be around. We really enjoyed having him, and we thank you, Mr. Goers, for your support of Support Act. I'll take you out tonight with another guest that we had at our lunch, a fabulously talented young lady by the name of Bridget O'Shannessy.
Thank you very much.